People like the feeling of being a part of a community. He has a large one. Yeah, well, and this is the exact reason why these streamers kind of freaked out when how much they made was leaked. Like, it doesn't take a genius. So look at Hasan, like Hasan's fucking thing is right there. His sub count up at the very top right. I don't know if you can actually see it. Like very top right. My mouse doesn't show on that screen on the top right. But Hasan makes freakish amounts of money. And you know how much he's making just by that count. So when we see it, like it's 45,373. So I can't actually tell if you, I think you can. It might be cropped out a little. But you multiply that for his size of channel, it's about $3 per sub that he pockets. And that's per month. So the dude is walking away with like 120,000 plus after taxes, at least $100,000 every month that he's just pocketing just from subs, much less donations and ads and like sponsorships. And this is why like some of the top streamers have these really kind of crappy looking streams. Like his camera, he's using a pretty shitty camera. And like the framing, he hasn't put a lot of effort into any of that. The microphone is pretty bare bones. I actually use the same one, and he's worth way more than I am. He could afford a nice Howard Stern level mic, but he doesn't. And they do this because they want to seem like you. They want to come off like they're one of you. It's very intentional. It's not just that he's lazy, which he probably is, but it's that he's very intentionally presenting himself this way so that you feel as though he's just one of you. He's one of you guys, right? That boy, when we're talking about the money he's making, it is. Like I've looked into upgrading this microphone, and the next step up for me would be about $1,200. Like the Howard Stern microphone that he uses, fantastic microphone, is about $1,200. And for this guy making over $100,000 a month, you would think he would have like a full studio. Like you see Ninja and Nick Merckx. Like, have you seen Nick Merckx's studio? Look at this studio. Like this is what he does. And I show where it's like this is probably the best picture of it. Like, look at that. So he has a custom ceiling, all this custom lighting. All of these are sound pads. So he also has these stations here, 4 stations, so he can play LAN games with friends. His water features, beanbag chairs, specialty flooring that cancels noise. He has like a wall of PCs and then his main gaming PC here. Variable lighting control. This is what it looks like from his perspective when he's streaming. Custom sound panels, all of these specialty monitors. Like he's not trying to hide how much he's making. He's not trying to hide that he's very successful. Yeah, the lounge space with custom lighting and the stars. So like he's just presenting it. He doesn't hide it, which I can respect. But part of the reason that people like Hasan and XQC and Penguin, like the reason why these guys present themselves in a much less, in a much worse way, like that's a quality camera, quality lighting, like it's done very, very well. The reason why XQC doesn't do that is because he wants to seem just like you. He's just like you and you're just hanging out while he streams stuff. So he's just like you. He doesn't present that he's making, $250,000 every month. Because if he did that, and like he shows up on stream wearing tons of gold chains and he's got just stacks of cash behind him, and he opens every stream like filming straight out of his brand new Bugatti or Rolls Royce that he buys every month, you wouldn't feel compelled to support him because he's not like you. Right? So they present themselves like they're just you, but streaming. And as a result, people think that they're helping him out. So like Hasan, he's got a pretty avid sycophantic fan base. A lot of people who also have like a weird crush on him too, which I find baffling. But he's built like a trapezoid. I'm sorry, he's built like a trapezoid. But yeah, it's too bad that some of the top streamers in the world have to hide what they're actually worth. It's like when what's her name? The girl streamer who got in a bunch of trouble for, like, it was a scandal, amazingly enough, when it came out she had a boyfriend. People are like, how dare you? She's like, what? I have a boyfriend and I don't talk about it. They're like, yeah, the point is you didn't talk about it. Pokimane, that's it. They're like, you didn't talk about it because you knew that you had all these neck-bearded dudes following you, giving you money because they dreamed that one day they could be your boyfriend. And so you hid that you were in a relationship, a serious committed relationship, from all of your social media, from everything you were doing, because you wanted to remain, like, keep and foster that illusion that there was a chance somebody could have it, a relationship with you. That's what's kind of sad. So that's why I respect somebody like Nick. Like, Nick is doing very well. Nick is doing very well. He's got a few houses. This is his house, his mansion in Michigan, I think is where he lives. And then his studio is in the basement. I love this feature work. I think it's beautiful. And he has a place in Florida as well. He's doing very, very well, and he doesn't hide it. He doesn't feel like he has to lie about it. Whereas like Hasan, I can spell house. Hasan tried to cover up his super expensive new mansion. Is that it? Like, he just bought a $2.7 million mansion. And when it came out, his fan base like freaked out. Called him a sellout and stuff. People were freaking out about it. Because he's doing well. Because they're giving him all this money. Because he presents himself like this when he's actually making millions and millions and millions of dollars. Which is just generally my frustration. Like, these... Yeah. XQC claims there's no winning for Twitch big earners after Hasan House fallout. Well, perhaps, but it's because you are intentionally hiding how much you're making. Like, or at the very least, trying to present as though you're not making that much. So these kids who follow you, who use their mom's Amazon Prime membership to support you, when they realize that you're a multimillionaire, and when you said you were going to run and get McDonald's and then be back on stream, they didn't realize you were driving your Rolls Royce to do it. You shouldn't be surprised when they feel betrayed when they realize that you are freakishly wealthy. You know. Adarina, good to see you. Yeah, they support. I think it's just like there's a few layers of sort of friction between there. Like, Hasan presents his sub count. He presents it. I think that's good. You do reach a point when you're a large enough streamer that I don't know why they present it. Maybe just so everybody knows how well they're doing, or so they can like flex. I don't know. But I don't know if there's a perk to showing it, right? I really don't know. But like, Hasan presents his sub count, which I think he probably does so that he can show like, hey, I didn't hide it. You could see I was very, very wealthy. So it shouldn't be a surprise to you that I'm doing so well. But still, like, I think people push it off far enough that they just don't want to think about it, you know? Like this. Look at this. This is wonderful. Hasan hits back at Twitch outrage over him buying a $2.74 million Hollywood home. The full quote: I do donate, some public, most not. However, this is A fucking brain dead take that keeps dumbasses thinking Bill Gates is a good guy, by the way. So he immediately pivots and like transitions it to like, well, really rich people are bad. This is more why it was so funny that Hasan was freaking out about this, because Hasan is like one of the lefty people out there. Like he is hardcore to the left of left. And he, so for him to then go and buy a $2.7 million house while claiming that money in politics and the wealthy should be taxed way more, it's just insane. Yeah, he deleted the tweet. You really think my personal accounting is a valid political critique? You seem to think that, Hasan. You've said that about every politician for years. Like, what are you talking about? You think that. And those still after his head can suck his dick. He also joked, what kind of wonderful, intelligent discourse would transpire if he decided to upgrade his car? Then Ethan, who I used to enjoy, but he's just insufferable nowadays, said, y'all really think Hasan shouldn't be able to own a nice house and also champion for the poor and underprivileged? There's a difference between making millions on Twitch and paying 50% in taxes, and Jeff Bezos being worth 150 billion and paying no taxes. Happy Hasan is crushing it. I have a degree in corporate finance, okay? I have a bachelor's degree in corporate finance. I know how taxes work for billionaires and millionaires, okay? This just explains that you have no perception of how corporate accounting works. Like, that's all that really tells me. So there are all sorts of ways that, like, billionaires, you have to understand where their wealth comes from. They own assets that are worth a lot. Like Elon Musk owns a lot of shares of Tesla. Those shares of Tesla, we've attributed a value based on how many are available on the market today, based on how the company is doing, based on what we think the company will do in the future. That's how we evaluate the worth of the company, right? So when we see like Elon Musk made $10 billion in a day, did he actually pocket like a direct deposit to his bank account billions? Thanks, Atarina. You're not making $1 billion a month, are you? Well, exactly. They're like, well, I'm not a billionaire, so I'm not actually rich. Like, okay, if that's your standard, but it's not. But like when Elon Musk gains $10 billion in a day, it's not like he's getting a direct deposit of $10 billion. Instead, he has a thing, like say that this, like we're talking about NFTs, right? Say this phone is worth $1 today. And then tomorrow it's worth $10 billion because we've agreed it's worth $10 billion. The question at the heart of this whole debate is whether or not you should be taxed on that gain if you still haven't realized it. Because if I sold this phone for $10 billion, I should pay taxes on that gain, on that profit. That's their argument. And that's what happens. When Elon Musk sells stock, he has to pay that tax. Right? The question is whether or not you pay taxes on the unrealized gains. So for Ethan to be like, well, Jeff Bezos is worth $150 billion and pays no taxes. That's not like, that is objectively untrue. He pays taxes if he realizes those gains. He just happens to have something. It's like being real estate rich. You can be real estate rich and worth tens of millions of dollars and have nothing in your checking account. I ran into it a lot when I was working in corporate real estate, where we'd have these old ladies who owned like a block in Golden, Colorado, one of the most expensive neighborhoods to live in, or cities to live in. And she owned in a very wealthy neighborhood. She owned a block, like 6 duplexes, a couple houses, and she had owned it for like 60 years. That block was worth tens of millions of dollars. And she was living off of Social Security. Month to month, barely making do, living in a tiny little like sub condo within one of those buildings. So she was very wealthy on paper, but it was real estate rich because she had an asset we agree is worth a lot, but she hadn't realized that asset. But if we were to come along and say, well, all of these billionaires need to sell their stock, sell their real estate and everything to pay a fixed percentage of what the unrealized value is. That's insane. Like, and the reason that that hasn't happened yet is because it doesn't make sense. And anybody who is in a position of authority to make financial decisions for the country and tax codes understands that doesn't work, because any day it can change. You know, it just doesn't work. Let's see. Regulax Avatar, he can also borrow against equity at near zero rates as well. Not something every slightly rich person can do. Well, sure. So when interest rates are really, really low, like they are right now, you can borrow against shares of stock that you hold. So Elon did this recently where he took out billions. Like it was something like $88 billion. No, not 88 billion. It was like 8 billion. I forget how much it was. He took out billions of dollars as a loan against the stock that he holds. He has to pay that loan back. And so the question then is, well, should he have to pay tax on the loan he takes out? Well, if you're going to say that, then you're going to have to start paying taxes against your mortgage. You have to pay taxes against the debt that you forward on credit cards. Like if you have to pay taxes on liabilities and debt, things get not just really complicated, but it stops making sense, period. And at the end of the day, Elon still has to pay that loan back. And the thing is, if somebody's willing to give him a loan at 0% or close to 0%, like straight in line with inflation at like 2.8%, that's their prerogative. Like it's not the government giving him that cash with those shares backing it. The private lender chose to front him that money in exchange for being backed by those shares. So are you going to start saying that people can't loan money privately? That's a little insane, you know? Reminds me of my friend who out all his money in crypto, or I'm guessing it was put all his money in crypto and was technically richer than all of us. Whenever we went out for dinner, he couldn't join because he was broke. Yeah. Well, it's being asset rich and not cash rich. And so for like Hasan is cash rich. He has cash coming into the bank. I don't know what he does with it. He doesn't, I mean, obviously he's buying very nice houses. I don't know if he paid cash for it. He shouldn't have. Paying cash for a house and owning it outright is kind of dumb, but it's, he's very, very wealthy. And the only reason this became a scandal is because he preaches day in, day out that wealth makes you, or at least can make you, a bad person, because it's the first line of attack he goes against almost everybody, because he's a Bernie bro, right? And he has no understanding of how finance works on the broader market level. Like you can have a lot of money and be really dumb financially. Let's be real. I've worked with some people, some real estate owners who were very wealthy and dumb as a sack of rocks. No understanding of how, like even if they owned a company, some people don't understand how even like net operating loss carry forwards work. I'm like, how did you run a company successfully without understanding that? It's unbelievable. But this is the thing. Like, do you think any of these guys understand that? No. They certainly don't have degrees in it. Like they didn't study it for 4 years. So I don't want to hold it necessarily against them that they don't get that. But like, this is the thing. It's really easy to just point at billionaires and be like, they need to pay their fair share. I agree. Billionaires should pay something into the economy. They should participate. And you can point, well, yeah, they provide jobs. They were in companies that are very successful. But that's kind of all beside the point. You have to look at it practically speaking, like play it out. Play it out. What are you actually saying? Elon Musk is worth 100, like just let's say today, he's worth $150 billion. I think it's more today actually, but he's worth $150 billion. Of that amount, what percent of that is in stock that he holds, but he hasn't sold, he hasn't cashed out on, he just holds an asset worth that amount. It's probably like 99% of his wealth. Like Elon Musk said that when he moved to Austin, he didn't have a house. He was sleeping in a conference room at the Tesla headquarters where they were building it up. He didn't even have a house. It's not that he couldn't afford the house. He just didn't see it as important, right? So is it a myth he doesn't pay taxes? Well, you have to ask what, like as bizarre as it is, you have to ask what taxes they're talking about. Is he paying income taxes on those billions of dollars? No, but it's because those billions of dollars aren't income. Tax, like speaking legislatively as far as the tax code is concerned. Because if you were to treat that stock as income, you would be forcing people to sell stock to pay a tax bill based on what it's worth at any given day. So if I own this phone, it's worth $1 today. Tomorrow it's worth $10,000,000,001. I have a $10 billion gain on that. And maybe at the end of the year, we count out how much money your portfolio has gained in value. And then you have to pay that tax bill. Like say it's 10% or just 10% for ease. So all of a sudden, December 31st, I have a phone worth $10,000,001,001. January 1st comes around, I owe the government 10% of that value, $100 million. I don't have $10 billion in my pocket. I have an asset worth that. So now I have to sell this to hopefully for $10 billion to come up with $100 million to pay that tax bill. And that gets tricky when you start talking about like whether you hold real estate. Like, okay, so if you buy a home, like this is happening right now all over the country. If you own a home, like let's just use round numbers. You buy a home for $100,000. I know a lot of them are worth way more than that, of course. But let's, for simplicity, you own a house that's worth $100,000 on December 31st of 2020. At the end of this year, that house rose in value $50,000. It's worth $150,000. If you go by what Hasan is trying to argue for, and like Ethan and these guys who are saying like billionaires need to pay their fair share, or Anna Kasparian, whoever she is. If you are arguing based on what they're saying, where billionaires just need to pay their fair share because they don't think about these things, then what you'd have to say is that January 1st of 2022, I would have to sell my house in order to pay a tax bill to balance out that $50,000 gain my house has realized. I'm not living any fancier. My house isn't any fancier. My net worth increased because the house rose in value. But you're going to say then I need to pay taxes on that $50,000 chunk, even though I'm not making any more every month. I'm not pocketing anything more. I don't have anything more in my checking account. So the only way I'm going to be able to pay that tax is if I sell the freaking house. Or if I refinance the house and use some of the refinance to pay for that tax bill, which sometimes happens. And like, but then, people are also saying, well, billionaires shouldn't be allowed to refinance or finance loans with their stock backing it, because then it's basically tax-free income. So, okay, well, then you're saying that if I were to sell that house or refinance that house to pay that tax bill, I'd have to be taxed on that refinance. In this analogy, you'd pay the taxes every time you take another mortgage, not when you pay it. Okay, so if we were to say, like, and this is where the order, it's like in a math equation, like the order of operations really matters because when you're taking like a 10% cut of anything, and then you're dividing it, and then you're re-amortizing the loan, and then a year goes by and the assets increased in value, and then you need to refinance it and redo everything. It gets kind of messy. He's definitely paying taxes that are required of him. The difficult part is that he has a pool of money he can draw from, interest and tax free. That's up to policymakers to resolve in a clearer way, though. Yeah, and I'm not saying there isn't a way to resolve that issue. Like, if you want to set it so, like, I don't know what the solution would be, because if there were an easy solution, it would have been found by now. Because it gets messy whenever you do it. Like, if you are going to say, like, okay, you take out loans backed by stock, because stock is just an asset, then you should pay tax on whatever you use in that refinance, or in that loan, which sort of like a HELOC, so like a home equity line of credit, where you have a difference in equity. So say you own $100,000 on your house, the house is worth 150,000. So there's a 50,000 difference. You could create a HELOC loan, so a home equity line of credit, where the bank says, well, we're going to take like 25 grand, back it up also against the value of your house, just like your mortgage is. And you can use that $25,000 whenever you want and pull out of that line of credit. And maybe that line of credit would be taxed like income if you were to pull off of it. And maybe that's something specific to tax or to stock-backed loans. That could be really interesting. And I think that might work. But, you know, this is why like financial markets are complicated and these issues are complicated because you're playing in billions of dollars, trillions on the macro level. So, it's just like for any quick decision you could make or quick idea, there would be 50,000 different negative implications, which could greatly affect the markets and cause all sorts of issues, which is why this stuff is nuanced. Like Katsu, you could say it's complicated and nuanced, but it's much easier to make sweeping, catchy statements while streaming. Yeah, and I mean, do I think all of these guys are dumb? No. Some of these guys are really smart and understand this. I've never seen Hasan say anything that would make me think he's like a particularly brilliant person, because I don't think he needs to talk about any of this in a comprehensive way. It's always just very bare bones, high level. Billionaires should pay their fair share. Like, who's going to disagree with that? Sure. But you have to, if you're suggesting policy reform, you have to give me more than that, because that doesn't get us anywhere, right? So, because then, like, then when people come in here and they're like, hey, you know, Bobby Kotick is a dick. I'm like, yeah, no, he is. And he doesn't even pay his taxes. I'm like, well, that's like, that is blatantly untrue, because if people weren't paying their taxes, they'd be going to jail. Like, that's how it works, especially when you're worth millions or billions. So like, that's not true. And they're like, well, I'm saying that the law is set up in a way where he doesn't have to pay as many taxes as we do. Like, well, dollar amount wise, that's not true. Percentage wise, that's interesting. Let's delve into it. It's because he doesn't have an income like you do, where he's making cash on cash, a check direct deposited, right? He has an asset that is worth an increasing amount based on the performance of his work. So if he does a good job running the company's worth more. That asset he's rewarded with, the stock, increases in value, and then he can sell that, or he can, you know, open a loan backed by the shares he holds. So like, it's more complicated than people make it out to be. Absolutely. But like, this is all I talked about and studied for like 4 years. So I like getting into the nitty gritty, especially because it drives me up the wall when people like Hasan and these types go on and on about how, you know, the big businesses aren't paying their fair share. It's like, well, we need to be a little more specific, I think. Otherwise, we're just being silly and we're just ranting and yelling at windmills, you know, like Don Quixote.